Well, howdy there, folks. It's Jay Bravo here. It's been a long time since I posted anything. So today I wanted to break that dry streak and put out a little video to give a little update about what's been going on with me this year, as well as talk about replacement of the starter motor on this old 65 Panhead behind me here. I actually attempted to make a video outlining the replacement of the starter motor and the battery on my 1965 ElectraGlide Panhead a few days ago, and after I got done taking the 10 minutes or so to shoot the video and looked at the playback, I realized that I had hit the wrong button on the camera and never hit the record. So then I took another 10 minutes and did take two. And on that one, I realized that I forgot to turn my external microphone on and didn't have any audio. So I was a little discouraged at that point and said, well, never mind. Who cares about any of this anyway? But then earlier this morning, I was thinking about it. I thought, you know, it actually might help someone. It certainly would have helped me. If there's anybody out here who owns a 1965, in particular a 1965 Panhead motorcycle, ElectraGlide, even the server car, or one of the other FLs, which I believe there was at least one other model, and you're having some trouble with the starter motor. Either the starter motor's failed or it's weak, doesn't want to start, you hit the button on the handlebars and it doesn't work, or it's just cranking really slowly, anything like that, because that had been a chronic problem with mine. In fact, all the last year I've been riding, I pretty much was having to kickstart it because I couldn't get the starter to reliably work. But anyway, we'll get into that in a couple of minutes. Just thought I'd throw it out there. The biggest reason why I haven't posted any videos in so long, it's now mid-August of 2026. I'm not sure I've even put one out there yet this year, but 2026 has been a very busy and eventful year for me, a good year. Right at the end of 2025, I had my right hip joint replaced. I was nearly crippled and unable to walk before that. You might have seen in some of my past videos the way I limped around. Well, got the hip joint replaced, and boy, that took care of that problem pretty much overnight. I had about 3 days of downtime, took 2 days off of work, and I was back in the gym lifting weights on this hip a week after that surgery. It was kind of a medical miracle. So fantastic news there. Speaking of joint replacements, in February of this year, so 7 months ago now, almost 7 months ago now, I had my right shoulder joint replaced. Full joint replacement in the right shoulder. So now I have a titanium hip and a titanium shoulder. I'm scheduled to get the left shoulder done in October while I'm still rehabbing this one, but it's not like I got in a motorcycle accident or anything catastrophic like that. It's just old age and 36 years of heavy abuse in the weight room on my joints, I guess, but no cartilage at all left in my shoulders. And I was to the point where I could, on my left side that hasn't been replaced yet, that's about as high as I can lift my hand up above my head before I get pretty severe pain and a lot of popping and grinding. Well, so now this side has been replaced. I got full range of motion back to lifting weights a little bit. My strength went to kaput. I'm about as strong as I was when I was 6 years old, but comes with the territory. I'm working slowly to build it back. But anyway, it's all good news. Let's see what else. I got married this year. The lovely Miss Jamie and I tied the knot back on May 2nd. So just a few months into being a newlywed again. But that's been really great. She's a terrific woman. I knew shortly after meeting her that I needed to marry her, because there's really not many women of her caliber left running around out there loose in the world. And I like to say she's kind of the last of a dying breed, and I'm extremely blessed and fortunate to have found her and somehow convinced her that she'd want to spend the rest of her life with me as well. So that's been good. We've just been very busy combining our lives and getting the homestead here set up. And she's a professional woman with her own career. She had been working down in Florida, which had caused me to spend quite a bit of time down in Florida, but we worked it out to where she's back here now. We're both back here in Central Virginia, and life is good. So anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about the ElectraGlide here. So to give you the backstory, this was my dad's bike. It's a 1965 ElectraGlide. This bike is 100% original, or it was, with the exception of the tires, the chain, and a couple of the bulbs, the headlight, and a couple of turn signal bulbs. Every single nut, bolt, washer, and hose on this thing is just the way it came out of the factory. But the starter motor was getting less and less functional over time. I think, like I said, last year, the few times I rode it, get the battery fully charged, hit the button on the starter or on the handlebars, and a lot of times it would just get a click. Sometimes I'd get like, and then that was it. I couldn't get it to start with the starter motor, even with bypassing the switch, because I had thought that it might just be some bad high resistance wiring going between the switch and the solenoid. But even directly jumping the solenoid with a full battery, starter would hardly do anything. The best I ever got this thing to crank over, I'll give you an example, was about like, and that was it. So I researched it a little bit and found that you can get an aftermarket starter motor from places like, I believe Cycle Drag was the place I found, or Drag Specialties rather was the place I believe that I found mine. I will put a link in the description to where I got the new starter and the new battery, but claims that it's a replacement Hi-Torque Prestolite starter, which is good for the 1965s up through whatever year, 69 on the Panheads. And after months and months of procrastination about it, because I kept wanting to see if maybe I could I just kept having this feeling that maybe it was a wiring issue, or even just a weak battery that was fooling me. But anyway, after determining that it really wasn't the battery, and I got tired of not being able to start it easily, so I went ahead and ordered the replacement Prestolite starter. And I also decided, once I took my battery off and did some investigation on it, that it wasn't really holding a charge very well. And I found that you can get an aftermarket sealed AGM battery with 350 cranking amps instead of the 200 that the original equipment battery had. So decided to buy a new battery as well. Both of those things came in last week, and I went ahead and did the work replacing them, which is why I wanted to make the video originally, to sort of do a little how-to showing how I removed the starter and how I put the new one in and what was involved in it. But like I said, I had technical failures, and that video never got captured. But the reason why I thought this video might be helpful to someone out there who has a 1965 and is having starter issues is because of what I learned about the starter motor in particular. After I had actually ordered the Prestolite replacement starter, I came across a Harley-Davidson's service bulletin from 1966, February of 1966, that states that on 1965 only, the original equipment starter motor was not the Prestolite, it was a Delco-Remy. And in the beginning of 1966, they discontinued using the Delco-Remy and switched over to the Prestolite starter. And this service bulletin was in regard to that, saying that if you had a 65 model bike and you needed a replacement starter, you weren't going to be able to get the original Delco-Remy anymore. They were going to ship you, or the dealer would have, a Prestolite starter, and it could be a retrofit with the addition of some brackets and hardware. Now, this bulletin did not specify what that bracket and hardware was, but when I read this, I thought, oh great, I ordered this Prestolite starter, and it turns out that's not even going to be the original equipment, and it's probably not going to fit or work. But when it came in, it sure looked like it was the same, so I decided to go ahead and pull the old starter off and see what I would have to deal with. And it turns out it was a pretty easy job. I'm going to take the camera down and show this up close. Well, no. So here you have my original battery, the non-sealed, the Harley-Davidson HD-12 original equipment battery for these old bikes with these horrible type of terminals they have on them. And of course, this is the kind where you have to put acid in it and distilled water, and they oftentimes leak, and it only has 200, it says it has 200 cold cranking amps out of the factory, which is very little. And here is the original Delco-Remy starter that came off of it. So unfortunately, it's all back together now, so I can't really show you what's involved, but I think I'll put up on the screen the service bulletin and maybe a snapshot out of the service manual of the little bell housing or gear casing, I believe they call it, that attaches to the end of the starter, which in turn bolts onto two studs on the inside of the chain case. But the good news is, and what I want everybody out there to know who might be in a similar situation, is it turns out I did not need any extra brackets or any additional hardware, and that when I followed the recommended instructions in the manual, which was to remove the starter by, I don't know if you can see up in there, there's two through bolts here and here that go all the way through the body of the starter and screw into the little cast aluminum housing, gear housing, basically like a bell housing. And then that housing has two through holes in it, which go over two studs that are coming out of the chain case, quarter 20 studs. So you just have to remove two nuts. And they say to not try to pull the starter off of the bell housing, but to get up in there and remove the two nuts off of the studs on the chain casing and pull the starter and little gear casing out as an assembly, which I did. And if you've got about a 10-inch long extension with a wobble end on it or a little swivel, you can actually get your 7/16 socket up in there without having to remove the oil line or anything else. You just have to remove, you do have to remove the battery tray and the battery, of course, to get that out of the way. And then the oil tank is somewhat free, and it moves up about a 1/2 inch, and it gives you just enough clearance to be able to wiggle that starter and gear casing assembly on out of there. And so happily, the drive gear on the end of the starter is exactly the same size and the same number of teeth as the original. This little boss and shoulder fits into the machined boss on the gear casing just right. Like I said, they're the same diameter and same length of the starter body. So once I got the starter out, I removed the starter, removed these two through bolts, took the starter free from the gear housing, which there's a gear up in there which actually fell out while I was trying to manipulate the starter and get it out of there. But you need to, I found it impossible to, once I had the new starter attached to the bell housing, I found it impossible to get that back into the bike and onto the starter shaft as an assembly. The reason being is the starter gear has to be clocked just right to engage on the splines of the starter shaft.
And when the two are bolted together like that, there's no way to turn the gear or anything, and you really only got about 3 or 4 degrees of rotation that you can manipulate this while it's up in there. So I ended up taking the starter, the new starter, back off of the gear casing, putting the starter gear into the gear casing, putting the gear casing up in there, getting it started on the studs, and then there's enough room you can get your finger in there to sort of turn the gear around till it gets in the right position, and it'll go on the splines and the whole gear casing. And starter gear finally went up, mounted flush onto the back of the chain casing, so I was able to get the nuts started and snugged up. And at that point, you can take the new starter, put it in there, you jiggle it around a little bit, and it went right in. The only thing that I actually had to do to make this work, I realized after I put it in there, was that the through bolt, this is the new through bolt that came on the new starter, and you can see this is the outboard end that has a little stud on it, which is made to catch this little bracket right here. Well, the stud on the new bolt is about a 1/2 inch shorter than the stud on the original through bolt that came off the original starter, and it was not enough to come through this bracket and be able to get the nut on it. So I removed the new bolt from the new starter and put the old through bolt from the old starter back into the new starter, which allowed me to go ahead and get it attached to this bracket. Everything bolted back up, and it worked great. So, and underneath here, of course, is my new sealed type AGM battery with 350 cold cranking amps. And I just have to say that it's a huge improvement. This thing has never cranked over so vigorously and reliably ever since I've had it, or since my dad had it before me. I'm pretty sure that out of the factory it was a pretty slow cranker, but I'm going to start it up here in a minute so you can just hear the difference. If you have one of these bikes, you'll know what I'm talking about. And yeah, I was tickled pink with the results of how well and easy it starts up now. So it's a pretty nice warm day out here, about 80 degrees, but it hasn't been started in a couple of days. I'm just opening the petcock a little bit to let some gas come in there. I'm gonna give it, actually I hope it doesn't start right away so you can just hear how nicely it cranks over, but I'm gonna give it about half choke. A little bit of gas. Well, it did start right up, but hopefully you could hear how strong and fast that cranked. And I tell you what, she runs like a top now. And it really is nice to have that reliable starting capacity with the starter in it. Since putting this new starter and battery in here, I think I've started it up probably a dozen times. Took it for a couple of rides yesterday, and so far the switch on the handlebar has not failed. It has worked every time, so I'm not sure what to attribute the fact that it didn't work before to, except possibly a weak battery. So there you go. I just hope that was helpful to anybody out there. I realize it's a pretty small set of people that have a 1965, especially that would even still have the original equipment starter on it. But just in case there's anybody out there in YouTube land who does have one of these bikes and was having the same kind of issue with the starter, or anyone that just finds this interesting, hope it was helpful and good to see everybody. I will have do want to make a couple more videos coming up soon, because my 2019 Breakout, my other bike, has been in the shop since
April of this year. And I'll make a whole nother video talking about what's going on with that, but I'm pretty excited to be getting it back. I should be getting it back this week with a whole new engine build in it. And that thing was one heck of a beast and a rocket before, but now it should be absolutely ridiculous, over the top. We're hoping for 180 horsepower plus. We'll see. Dyno tuning should probably happen Wednesday or Thursday this week, so I think I'm going to make a video detailing that and all the other work and upgrades I've done to it. Pretty excited to get that back. I've also got a loaner bike from the dealer, which is this 2021 Softail Slim, which I've really been enjoying that, and I thought it might be worth it to make sort of a little review video on that for people in case they're just in the market for a newer but somewhat used, lightweight, nimble Softail like that. It's a nice bike. But anyway, that's all for now. Everyone take care and be good to yourselves. GoPro stop. GoPro stop recording.